All right, well, good morning, everyone. We're just going to roll right into our next session. And so it's my pleasure to introduce our speakers for this general session who will provide some insight and information into how DC works to protect its most vulnerable citizens. We are joined today by Anabel Butler and Brice Kimble, both Assistant Attorneys General from the DC Office of the Attorney General. Their work involves not just policy, but direct legal action to combat abuse, discrimination, and exploitation. Today, they will share how OAG uses its authority to protect elders in the district. You will learn how to identify common civil rights violations, and most importantly, how to effectively partner with OAG to report issues and to seek legal remedies. This session will provide crucial actionable knowledge for every one of you. Okay, please join me in welcoming Anabel Butler and Brice Kimble to our stage for their presentation. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here with us today and allowing us the opportunity to present. My name is Anabel Butler. I'm an Assistant Attorney General with the Office of the Attorney General for the District of Columbia in the Civil Rights and Elder Justice section. And I'll let Brice introduce himself.
I'm Brice Kimble. I'm an Assistant Attorney General at the DC Office of the Attorney General in the Office of Consumer Protection.
So I'll start with the general disclaimer. Any opinions shared today do not necessarily represent the official views of the Office of the Attorney General. So I think it makes sense to give an overview of all of the work that the Office of the Attorney General does first, just to kind of situate where specifically elder justice fits within the broader scheme. So the Office of the Attorney General is the chief legal office of the District of Columbia. The office is led by the independently elected Attorney General, Brian Schwab. And there are 9 divisions within OAG, which I will briefly describe. There is the Child Support Services Division, which is responsible for establishing child support obligations and monitoring those obligations. There's the Civil Litigation Division, which represents the District of Columbia in civil lawsuits against the district. There's the Commercial Division, which provides legal advice to district agencies, including government contracts, bankruptcy, and tax issues. There's the Family Services Division, which handles all child abuse and neglect litigation on behalf of the district. There's the Legal Counsel Division, which provides legal advice to the mayor, the attorney general, the council, and department and agency heads. There is the Office of the Solicitor General, which handles all appellate litigation for the district. There's the Public Safety Division, which prosecutes all juvenile criminal cases and select adult misdemeanor cases. And then there's the Support Services Division, which provides essential financial, risk management, operations, and administrative services. Brice and I are both housed in the final division, which is the Public Advocacy Division. This division is responsible for promoting the rights of district residents through civil enforcement action. What this means is that we bring affirmative cases in the District of Columbia Superior Court generally to protect the rights of district residents. So since this is both of our areas of expertise, we're going to be speaking on that specific division here today. And I think it's the most relevant to the elder justice issues we're discussing. The Public Advocacy Division is further divided into 6 sections, which I will briefly mention before diving into our specific areas. So the Housing and Environmental Justice section, which litigates cases regarding deplorable housing conditions and enforces environmental laws. We have the Antitrust and Nonprofit section, which enforces district and federal antitrust laws and district statutes relating to nonprofit corporations and charities. The Workers' Rights and Anti-Fraud section, which protects workers' rights to minimum wage, overtime pay, sick leave, along with recovering money from individuals and entities that defraud the district. The Equitable Land Use section, which advocates for the public interest in zoning, land use planning, historic preservation, housing, etc. And now the reason I said all of this and the reason I described all of this is because OAG is much broader and larger than simply the mediation program and the civil rights and elder justice section that I'll be discussing today. And I think it's important for these matters we're discussing to know that there are other options that are available to you through the Office of the Attorney General. But I will be talking about the civil rights and elder justice section. It's divided, as the name suggests, between the civil rights and elder justice. The civil rights portion of our work concerns discrimination in 4 main areas of life: housing, education, public accommodation, and employment. And there are over 20 protected traits under the DC Human Rights Act. That's an incredibly protective statute, and I would recommend looking into all of these because there's a lot that's covered. But some that I'll highlight here are race, gender, age, and disability. The elder justice work, which is my area of focus, we look into financial exploitation of vulnerable adults and elders. An elder is defined by statute as individuals over the age of 65. What this means is we don't handle abuse and neglect cases. We don't investigate those, nor do we look into those. We're really looking exclusively at financial exploitation. And so that's where our office would be the most use to any of the service providers here. Additionally, we bring cases in the public interest. This means we do not represent individuals in any capacity. We bring cases on behalf of the District of Columbia writ large. Given this, we typically focus on pattern and practice because this is the way we're able to give back and impact the majority of our communities. By pattern and practice, I mean things that affect more than one singular individual that has an opportunity to affect a large number of seniors, for example. And I'll give an example of a recently filed case because I think this explains what I mean by pattern and practice, and I think might be helpful to give kind of instruction on what types of cases we generally look into. So we recently filed suit against a company called Athena Bitcoin. Athena Bitcoin is a Bitcoin ATM company that previously operated in 7 locations across the district. A Bitcoin ATM company, for any who are not familiar, is where you can take cash and put it into what looks like a regular ATM, and the money gets transferred or converted into Bitcoin and transferred into a digital wallet. Unfortunately, this is a prime tool for scammers. During the first 5 months of operation in the district, 93% of the deposits into these Bitcoin ATMs were the product of a scam. The average age of users during this period was 71 years old, and the median deposit size was $8,000. So we're talking about really life-ruining amounts of money being lost to scammers, and particularly elders. Our lawsuit alleges that Athena knew of the high usage of its machines by scammers, and that it failed to implement any reasonable consumer protection to protect consumers, particularly in this case, the elderly. And I think this case is illustrative for 2 main reasons. One, it gives a general overview of the types of cases we're looking into. We want to hold individuals and corporations accountable for their role in any exploitation of our seniors. However, I think it's also a really important way. We also try to include education as a big part of it. I think once someone has been scammed or has been financially exploited in any way, it can be very challenging to get the money back. So we view this as an opportunity to educate the public, both service providers, also seniors, about the prevalence of these scams, what they look like, and kind of the modes and methods that these scams use in order to hopefully prevent future scams. And I will finally introduce the Office of Consumer Protection. This is the final section in the Public Advocacy Division, and it enforces, as the name suggests, the district's consumer protection laws. One of the biggest impacts that this section has is through its mediation program, and I will let Brice give an overview of that mediation program.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us today. As Anabel said, a lot of the work at the Attorney General's office is district-wide, and the mediation program is unique in that it can address more individual issues by submitting a complaint to our office. It's a quick little disclaimer for you there. But what can we do as OAG mediation? We try to resolve consumer and tenant complaints without going to court. So if a consumer has a complaint against a business or a landlord, we try to resolve those issues without, having the expense or the pressure of going to court. It's a free service, and there's a very low jurisdictional bar to getting help. We can help if the consumer is a DC resident, or if the business is located in DC, or if the transaction happens in DC. For landlord-tenant issues, there is a slightly higher bar. You must be a tenant in DC where the building is in DC. But other than that, we can try and help as best we can. If we can't help, OAG mediation also provides relevant referrals to other agencies in the district that can help. Some of the ones that are outside today, like SEDC and Department of Aging and Community Living. But I do want to give the caveat that OAG mediation is voluntary. the consumer and the business or landlord both have to voluntarily agree to participate. I don't have the power to force a business to give a request on behalf of the consumer, but we will try our best and advocate our best. So here's some more information about the eligibility to be in the program to submit a complaint. Like I said, it's very broad. Either a DC resident or the business is located in DC. Or, like I said, for landlord-tenant issues, the tenant must be living in DC. There also needs to be a merchant consumer transaction where a service is provided in exchange for what have you, usually money. We can't help when two businesses are fighting with each other, or even if it's a small business owner. And then there's some other examples of issues that we can't help with, like commercial leases, business contract disputes, condo, co-op, and HOA governance disputes. Those are things we can't help because there's no transaction between a merchant and a consumer. The other thing is that we exist outside of the court system, so we don't offer legal advice and we can't comment on the merits of your complaint or file a lawsuit, but we will advocate as best we can on your behalf. If a consumer or tenant is represented by a lawyer, that's okay. Representation is not a bar to mediation. We just follow the professional rules on communicating with someone with a lawyer. And that typically means reaching out to the consumer's lawyer and getting written permission to engage in the mediation process on behalf of the represented party. So how does this all work in practice? Consumers can contact mediation in any number of ways. We have a hotline and we answer calls very quickly. We have an online complaint form, and we even submit, or rather we collect emails in hard mail as well. Then someone on our OAG mediation staff or an intern will assess the complaint and then call the consumer so that we can understand the issue and the specific resolution that you're seeking from the business or the landlord. And then we will reach out to the business or the landlord via letter, presenting the complaint from a consumer's perspective and requesting the resolution that they're seeking. We ask that the business or landlord provide a written response because we strongly believe that a written record that details all of the communications is very important. The process varies. We have a hotline that returns calls the very same business day. So if you have a priority or an emergency issue, I really recommend calling the hotline because we will return that call very quickly. Most complaints are, we request for most complaints that businesses respond within 10 days to our letter, unless of course it's a priority issue. And I'll get into more detail about what priority issue means, but for a priority issue, we request a response within 1 to 3 business days. If you submit a complaint, you will be put into contact with a mediator on our staff, and the OAG mediator's job is to understand the issue and to best present the facts from the consumer's perspective. We will also work to request a specific resolution on your behalf, but we find that it's best to have specific monetary amounts or specific things that you need from the business that are not being delivered when you contact us. We worked with the consumer to make factual corrections when the business submits their answer to our complaint so that we can, again, create that firm written record and make sure that all parties are understanding of what the true facts are and try to reach a resolution. But the OAG mediator their primary goal is to remain neutral and focus on the facts. We find it's best to have a written record of facts, not feelings, so that all parties can point to a certain timeline of events when referring to the complaint. Here's several buckets of complaints that I've seen in my time at mediation. We get lots of landlord-tenant issues for things like building conditions, or if a security deposit has not been returned, or if you're looking to break a lease. Those are all things that we can help with. I also get lots of billing disputes where a refund may have been promised, but it hasn't been issued yet. If a consumer is overpaid for something, or if they're trying to cancel an account and the business has made it very difficult to cancel the account, mediation can reach out to the business on your behalf. Lots of contract disputes where you hire a contractor and maybe they haven't completed the work, or they've done a shoddy job, or they might have overcharged for what they delivered on. I've seen some social media lockouts where someone might have a Facebook or Twitter account or what have you and can't access their account anymore. We'll reach out to the social media platform and try to get access to your account reinstated. And then I think the most relevant one for our purposes is financial scams. We do report financial scams. But again, the buckets here, there has to be a consumer merchant transaction. And for our purposes, that includes landlords and tenants. Like I said, we have a lot of priority issues that we will respond to within one business day. These include things like utility shutoff, that's the landlord responsibility, like water, AC, and heat. We also work to prevent utility shutoffs. If there are building conditions that are impacting a consumer's health or safety, like rodent infestations or mold, things of that nature, we'll also consider that a priority issue and address it very quickly. Financial scams in progress are also treated as a priority issue because the longer that you wait, the harder it becomes to claw the money back. So it's best to contact mediation as quickly as possible, and then we will address it with such priority. So regarding financial scams, I wanted to give you all with some potential red flags to look for because scams are always on the rise. Some red flags to look out for are the pressure to act quickly. Another red flag is if someone's requesting your personal information, especially things like your bank account number or your social security number. If they're requesting access to your laptop or your computer or iPad or some other electronic device, it's probably a red flag and best to avoid that. A thing I like to say about unrealistic promises is that if it sounds too good to be true, then it probably is too good to be true. Just be wary if someone's promising something that seems a little, no one would offer that. And then another thing that we're seeing recently is impersonations. If someone's calling you claiming to be from a company, I would verify with that company first before you respond to the individual that called you. If you think that a financial scam has happened, I would call the bank and issue a chargeback as soon as possible. The longer that you sit on a large financial transaction, the harder it becomes to claw that money back. So it's best to call the bank and cancel as soon as possible. If personal information has been shared, I strongly recommend changing your passwords to things like your bank account and email addresses, things like that, and set up credit and fraud alerts just so you're aware if anything happens. I would also consider freezing your credit score to make sure that there's no negative impact on your credit report. And then you can also contact us. We will do our best to help as best we can, but time is of the essence, and I would do so quickly rather than later. You can also report it to the FTC. Here's a kind of sampling of our landlord-tenant issues that we see. We work in concert with the housing division at OAG, but OAG mediation is unique in that it can address more specific issues to individual tenants rather than citywide things. So things like building issues, requesting to break a lease, rent concessions, if an apartment has not been delivered as promised, if your landlord is not abiding by lease terms, things of that nature. And if we can't help, we will also refer your complaint to the relevant agency, like the Department of Buildings, for example. We submit a lot of housing inspection requests to make sure that landlords are maintaining the correct living conditions. The benefits of mediation are strong. It's not expensive. In fact, it's free, and it's less intimidating than going to court, so it's going to save the consumer or tenant a lot of time and money. And even if we can't reach a resolution, it creates a written record so that you can refer to something in the case that you do need to go to court one day. And we also connect tenants and consumers with relevant agencies that might be better able to assist you. The process is informal. I hope I'm not an intimidating person, but you're very likely to be on the phone with me, and we'll help address some local issues. The proof is always in the pudding. Last year, we responded to over 4,000 hotline calls and 3,500 online complaints, and we returned approximately $1.2 million back to consumers and tenants. So the program works. We just can't overpromise. Sometimes it doesn't work out, but usually we're able to help. You can come see us in the community every Wednesday. We're at a rotating DHS center from 10 a.m. to noon. I will have some more information for you later if that's relevant to you. And then here's the most important slide. Our hotline number is there. We will return your call within 1 day. And you can leave a message in any language. It does not need to be in English because we have a service that provides free translating services. So we can interpret your call in any language. It need not be in English. You can also submit a complaint online or email us. And I'll leave that slide up as we take some questions.
Yeah, I'll also note that the OAG mediation contact is a great way for any issues that you're having that you want to raise to the Office of the Attorney General. The mediators are great about identifying which section or which group would be the most effective to respond to the requests. And so even if it's not something that mediation can handle, they'll often refer it within OAG to other sections. So it's a really great kind of one-stop shop if you have anything that you want to raise to OAG's attention.
Much for your presentation. Before I look to the audience for any questions that you might have, I just want to start off with a few questions for you. So a specific goal of this summit is to enhance collaboration. We've talked about effective ways for multiple professionals as well as the community to get together. But one thing I'm interested in specifically is how would you advise the community and community partners to report potential elder abuse or exploitations to OAG? What specific information would you advise the community to gather that might be helpful to you when investigating?
Well, like I said, the hotline is the best way to contact us. And our mediators are very good about collecting information that we need, things like leases, receipts, relevant information to your complaint, to establish a written record, basically, anything that you'd want to know when contacting a business about something. And a mediator will help to collect that information as well.
Yeah, I'll just add quickly, I think the mediators and any of our intake folks are really good about asking all of the relevant questions and gathering the information. But to the extent you have any documents, they will let you know which documents would be helpful. But to the extent you can keep track of any records you might have, that's always helpful.
Thank you. One other question for you. So from a policy perspective, what are some of the systemic barriers you've encountered when litigating on behalf of adults or specifically older adults in the district? And what changes might you recommend in terms of policy or even legislation that would benefit your work in the elder justice area?
I'm happy to go first. One of the big barriers, again, as I noted, we do a lot of work with scams. And one of the big barriers I have found is that these scammers are very good about making anyone feel isolated from their community. And they will sell you not to tell anyone. They'll tell you to keep it a secret for various reasons. It depends on the pretense, obviously. But I think in doing this is make victims less likely to come forward. Often victims are embarrassed. And so I think it's really important to give support to elders and give them a safe and trustworthy place to come forward and to speak about their experiences. And I think that can come in a variety of ways. It can come from service providers. It can come in the form of our office. It can come from family and friends. But I think it's really important. That's a huge barrier that we have found, is just people not feeling comfortable speaking up about these issues.
I think also as technology has changed, scammers have changed. It used to be that people would come to your door and request large amounts of money or personal information, and that's kind of evolved into mailers, and it's now evolved into these phone calls and emails that people are getting. So I think using those same like red flag spotting tips that you had when someone was at your door and applying those to phone calls and emails. But in terms of like persistent problems, I think OAG mediation is working to address them with things like our language line. We can interpret any language. If someone has a complaint, it need not be in English, and we have a translator who will translate on the spot for us in any language. So we've worked very hard to make our form accessible, but there's work still to be done, obviously.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the audience while we have OAG here?
Are you able to also, how good is your sort of data management system about being able to find patterns or trends of repeat fraudsters or abusers, and then the ability, and if you find those patterns beyond just potentially AG bringing cases against them or taking action, what else can you do with them, and what's the ethics and sort of community understanding of those patterns?
I found that, so for mediation specifically, we have a database of every complaint we've ever received. Even when they're closed, it remains in our database, and we can quickly refer to them to look for patterns and things like that. And then when we go out into the community, we make sure that people are aware of the most salient issues that are persisting, I guess.
Yeah, I think one of the ways we also have a database that we track kind of some of the intakes that have come in and identifying patterns. I think another huge way we've identified patterns is going into the community and speaking with people. It's really amazing to hear people's stories and how similar so many of these stories tend to be. And so I think that's one way that we've also identified patterns. In terms of next steps, as I mentioned, we mainly do pattern and practice work. And so finding these types of patterns is really critical to elevating the cases to kind of an investigation and litigation posture, and for us to take any kind of affirmative litigation stance. So I hope that answered your question.
Thank you. We've run out of time, but I will make time if there's one more question that someone is dying to ask. All right, well, hearing nothing, I thank everyone for their time. We'll have about a 10-minute break before we move to our breakout session.